Is democracy possible? Is it even desirable? To both these questions, James Burnham answered, absolutely not. Though few recall his name today, James Burnham was one of the most important political philosophers of the 20th century. The Machiavellians, and his other book, The Managerial Revolution, represent classic texts in political theory. First, a brief biography of Burnham. He was born in 1905 to a wealthy Chicago family. His father was an English immigrant and an executive of the Burlington Road. Burnham attended Oxford University, where he studied under J.R.R. Tolkien and Martin Darcy. In 1929, he became a professor of philosophy at New York University. A Trotskyist activist in the 1930s, Burnham ironically went on to become one of the founding members of the conservative movement that emerged after World War II. He also helped William F. Buckley found the conservative magazine National Review in 1955. This represented a key development in the formation of a conscious and organized conservative movement. Of course, conservative ideas existed prior to this time, but individuals who ascribed to them did not gather themselves into a formal, organized movement until the 1950s. Burnham's ideas influenced some of the most provocative thinkers of his time and ours, from George Orwell and Dwight MacDonald to Paul Gottfried and Curtis Yarvin. Admittedly, it was Curtis Yarvin who initially inspired me to read and summarize Burnham's book. The following serves as the initial installment of a series of summaries and reviews on Yarvin's recommended readings, and as an introduction to a discussion of the limits and problems of democracy. The seriousness of this topic cannot be understated, especially considering the recent consternation over the state of democracy in America, and for that matter, the West. There is perhaps no better place to start in Yarvin's reading list, because Burnham challenged many popular assumptions about politics, especially with regard to democracy. Indeed, one of Burnham's primary purposes in the Machiavellians was to prove that democracy cannot exist. It never did, and it never should. No doubt such a statement would alarm most Americans today, as it did in Burnham's time. But democracy is not a universal good, contrary to popular opinion. Burnham sought to dismantle such common assumptions of democracy in order to offer a more comprehensive and realistic understanding of politics and power. Burnham mounted his first attack upon the negative popular perception of Machiavelli. Indeed, Machiavelli earned the unfortunate distinction of his name being almost entirely associated with malevolence. Merriam-Webster's online dictionary describes Machiavellianism as an adjective denoting cunning, duplicity, or bad faith. This perception of Machiavellianism is so pervasive it is frequently used to describe ruthless power-seeking. Given this, it is not surprising to find the same characterizations in academic psychological literature. For instance, in 2001, psychologists Delroy Paulhus and Kevin M. Williams published their dark triad theory, which identified 3 personality traits most associated with malevolent behavior: narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. This theory defined Machiavellianism as indifference to morality, manipulativeness, and strategic focus on self-interest. For centuries, Machiavelli's name found its use almost exclusively as a pejorative, but that fate was probably unfair to Machiavelli. To begin with, Machiavelli preferred republican government to monarchy, but he believed monarchy better suited the Italy of his time. Surely aware of this, James Burnham opened his book with a quote from Machiavelli that casts a much different light on the defamed philosopher. I come now to the last branch of my charge, that I teach princes villainy and how to enslave. If any man read over my book, with impartiality and ordinary charity, he will easily perceive that it is not my intention to recommend that government, or those men there described to the world, much less to teach men how to trample upon good men, and all that is sacred and venerable upon earth, laws, religion, honesty, and whatnot. If I have been a little too punctual in describing these monsters in all their lineaments and colors, I hope mankind will know them to better avoid them, my treatise being both a satire against them and a true character of them. If we take Machiavelli's words for granted, a tricky business indeed, as Burnham explained in Chapter 1. Machiavelli intended to describe behaviors associated with struggles for power so that people might better understand the mechanisms of power in society. Perhaps Machiavelli sincerely hoped such an understanding of power might help people avoid being trampled by it. In a single sentence in the preface of his 1963 edition to the Machiavellians, Burnham expressed a prerequisite attitude to the Machiavellian approach to power and politics. Through the Machiavellians, I began to understand more thoroughly what I had long felt, that only by renouncing all ideology can we begin to see the world and man. Recalling his involvement in the conservative movement, one might rightly object that Burnham already contradicted himself. Surely Burnham would not have helped start the conservative movement if he had also renounced all ideology. But Burnham's deeper point was to give a reader a sense of his approach to power and politics, following the tradition of Machiavelli. As Burnham went on to explain, Machiavelli maintained a remarkably relativistic approach to politics, and similarly to the scientific method, endeavored a dispassionate and objective understanding of the powerful forces that shape our world. He believed that no one system of government suited all countries and at all times. Conversely, he also argued the optimal system of government varies between countries and across time. Put another way, one system of government that suits a particular country might not be well suited for another country. Likewise, a system of government that works well for a country for a period of time might not work so well for that country at another period of time. In fact, history shows us no one system of government ever survived indefinitely. Following Machiavelli, Burnham warned against all forms of ideology and instead urged dispassionate analysis of the facts. Machiavelli's method mimics that of science, using historical data to bolster his findings and pursuing the truth rather than what he wanted to find. After many years of thoughtful study, Machiavelli concluded, against his Republican preferences, that monarchy promised Italy the greatest security and prosperity.